Hey, Rev. My name is Pete, and I'm a pastor here at Eagle Brook. And it is really exciting for me to be here tonight because I get to talk with all of you about how every single one of us can get more satisfaction out of our lives. I mean, who doesn't want to wake up every morning and be excited about what they get to do every day? But if I'm honest, sometimes there are things that we have to do every day that don't bring us life. Like when a research paper is assigned. Now, to complicate things even more, let's pretend you have a research paper assigned to you and you cannot use the internet to do your research. Some of you are probably like, without the internet, how would I live? Well, growing up in high school, I didn't have the resources that you all have today. So if we were assigned a project on, let's say the presidential election of 1952, I'd have to leave my house, go to a library, find what we called a card catalog, which was this giant wooden dresser filled with 3x5 note cards. Within that card catalog, I'd have to find the section on presidential elections, and then find the section of the 1952 presidential elections, which would then give me a list of books that might help me do my research for my project. And once I got my list of books, I would use the Dewey Decimal System, which is a series of letters and numbers, to determine where to find the book in the library. Now, I would go and I'd find the book, but if the book was checked out, or if it was out of order, I'd be out of luck, and I'd have to go back to the card catalog, find a new book, and start the whole process over. It was a ton of work. But today, all I have to do to find out who won the 1952 presidential election is pull out my phone, ask the question, which some of you maybe already have, and within an instant, we have our answer. It was Dwight D. Eisenhower, in case any of you are wondering. You see, I grew up asking questions that I could not find the answer to easily. I'd have to go digging, and I'd have to work really hard to find those answers. But now, we can simply ask our phone any question that we have, and within moments, we have our answer. Technology is absolutely amazing. But let's say you've been given that research assignment and you procrastinated. It's the night before, and you don't have time to do the research, and you don't have time to type it all up. You can run a search, and with a simple copy and paste, have a fully researched paper. You may have saved time, and yes, you did use your resources, but it wasn't your work. It's called plagiarism, and it's actually a pretty bad knock against you. And even if you didn't get caught, the work is not yours. And I know for me, I wouldn't feel great about turning in something that wasn't mine. Yes, it was easy, it was quick, it was simple, and it was done in an instant. But here's something I've learned. Instant is not always best. And that's because God made us to work. Inside each and every one of us, there's this desire to feel like we accomplished something. I can imagine there are only a few of you in this room tonight who woke up this morning thinking to yourself, you know what I can't wait to do with my life? Nothing. That's because from within us, there's this desire to accomplish something. And so I want to share with you what Moses wrote about in the book of Genesis. And he says, God formed the man from the dust of the ground. He breathed life into the man, and the man became a living person. God then placed man in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. The very first thing that humans did after we were created was work. We were to tend the garden, picking the ripe fruit, trimming the overgrown plants, and making sure that everything was watered and cared for. The desire to work is something that has been placed in all of us from the beginning. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's great, Pete. God made me to work. I'm tracking with you. I'm cool with that. But I don't have a job, and I'm certainly not living in a garden, so that means I don't have to work, right? Nope. Are you a student? Are you an athlete? Do you play an instrument? Are you part of a family? Do you volunteer somewhere? Work isn't limited to having a job, because work is the effort you give to accomplish something. And so since work isn't limited to a job, I want to give us 3 easy steps that all of us can take to get more satisfaction out of the work that we do in our lives. And so the first step that we can take is to find your work. Identify which area in your life you want to put effort into accomplishing something. Do you want to maintain a GPA? Do you want to nail that next audition? Do you want that starting position? Or maybe you do have a job and you're just looking to not get fired. What's your work? What do you do? What do you want to put effort into? That is your work. Jesus tells us a story about an incredibly rich master who had 3 servants. And one day this master decides to go away for a while, and he leaves his fortune in the hands of his 3 servants. To the first servant, he gives him 5 talents of gold. To the second servant, 2 talents of gold. And to the third servant, he gives 1 talent of gold. Well, first question is, what's a talent? Other than playing the trumpet well or singing or being great at throwing a football, a talent of gold in biblical times was a weight measurement. And it was about 75 pounds. So 1 talent of gold was 75 pounds of gold, which is equal to about $1 million today. And so this master, this rich guy, gives his servants $5 million, $2 million, and $1 million. And we see that the first 2 servants, the one who received $5 million and $2 million, they go to work and they invest it and they double their money. But what about that third guy? The one who was given $1 million. He doubled it too, right? No. We read in the story that this guy gets this brilliant idea to dig a hole in the ground, put the 75 pounds of gold into the hole, cover it back up, and sit on it, and just wait. After a while, the master comes back, and he wants to check in on his servants to see what they did with the money that he gave. And so he checks in with all 3. But let's start with that third guy, the one who received just $1 million and dug a hole and put it in the ground. This is what the master says to him when he finds out what the servant did with the money that he gave. He says, "You wicked and lazy servant. Why didn't you deposit my money in a bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." And then he ordered, "Take the money away from this servant." Yikes. So not only did this guy get yelled at, he also had all of the money taken away from him. So you see, doing nothing leaves us with nothing. I have this crazy goal of one day running an Ironman triathlon. It's a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike, followed by just a short 26.2-mile run at the end of it. You know, I've looked into it. I know what the entry fee is. I know which race I even want to run. I've even looked at a couple of training programs. But to this day, I have yet to do any training for it. I haven't hired a coach. I haven't signed up for it. I've done nothing. And in doing nothing, I have nothing to show for it. I can't stand before you today and say, "I've done a triathlon, an Ironman," because I've done nothing. Which leads me to the second step that each of us can take to getting more satisfaction out of the work that we do. And that is to do your work. My first job was at Old Navy. Yeah, it wasn't on the career path that I wanted, but it paid for the gas for my car and for the things I wanted to do with my friends. And my first task was to resize the jean wall in the boys section. And so it's this wall of pants, like 300 pairs. There's 24 different sizing options, and Old Navy carried 4 different cuts and 4 different colors. I had to size them from biggest on the bottom to smallest on the top by cut, by style, and by color. It took me 4 hours. I had to refold every single pair. But when I was done folding the jeans on this denim wall, it was perfect. It's absolutely pristine. Straight lines, even folds, just the way I was taught. And after I finished resizing this denim wall, I went on a 15-minute break. And when I came back from break, the first thing I did was go to the denim wall to see if it still looked amazing. And I turn the corner, see the wall, and my heart just drops. It looked like a tornado had gone through the boys' denim section. Turns out, after I had just finished sizing that wall, 2 moms came through, and it felt like they literally pulled out every single pair of jeans, unfurled them, looked at them, crumpled them up, and shoved them back into the wall. It was a mess. And as I'm standing there staring at this wall in disbelief, my manager comes over to me and he goes, "Well, that's a bummer. Looks like you got more work to do." So I had to do it all over again. In another one of my jobs, I got to work at a kids camp. And part of working at this kids camp was that we had a tubing hill in the winter. And somebody had to go test out the tubing hill every season. Somebody had to do the work of riding a snow tube down the hill, carving out the path. I got to be that guy. I got to be the one to do the work of making sure that the path was safe. Now that was fun. And now here at church, most of the work I do is a lot of fun and incredibly life-giving. But sometimes there are things I do just because I'm asked to do them. Resizing the denim wall and testing out the tubing hill were both work. But I did them because it helped me to accomplish something. Whether it was ensuring that the denim wall was easy for customers to navigate, or that our tubers were safe when they were tubing down the hill. Each of those tasks were part of a bigger picture. And Rev, you can do this. It doesn't matter what the work is, but by putting the effort into accomplishing it, will bring you a new satisfaction in life. If we go back to the story that Jesus told, I find it really interesting that the master didn't get angry at his servant because he didn't bring him more money. The master was angry with his servant because he did nothing with the money. He was given a fortune, and he dug a hole and he put it in the ground. So let's take a look at the other 2 servants and how the master responded to the ones who doubled what he gave them. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 talents of gold came forward with 5 more and said, "Master, you gave me 5 talents of gold to invest, and I've earned 5 more." The master was full of praise. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." What's really neat about the master's response is it's the same response for the servant with the 2 talents. So it didn't matter how much those servants had in the beginning. What mattered is what they did with what they were given. And their hard work got rewarded. In this story, the servant showed that they could be trusted because they worked hard. And so if you want more responsibility and trust in the work that you're doing, you have to show that you're trustworthy and able to take on more. Which brings us to the 3rd step that each of us can take in finding satisfaction in the work we do, and that is to crush your work. My brother-in-law, Ben, is in his 3rd year of medical school in Wisconsin, and the kid is brilliant, probably one of the most talented people I know. When he sets his mind to something, he crushes it. And so just to show you a little bit, he was valedictorian. He was captain of his soccer team. He was lead in the high school musical. He had a 4.0 all throughout high school. He got perfect score in not 1, but 2 instruments in the state solo and ensemble competition, and he got into the first medical school of his choice. The only knock against him is that he started going bald as a 19-year-old. We haven't let him live that one down. But anyway, he points a lot of his success back to a conversation that he had with his dad in 3rd grade. Ben got a 98% on a project, and as a 3rd grader, he went to his dad with so much pride and said, "Dad, I got a 98%. And his dad looked at him and said, "Ben, is that your best work?" Ben said, "Dad, I got a 98%. You can't do much better." And once again, Dad asked the question, but was it your best? They went back and forth for a while, and finally Ben admitted that the 98 was not his best work. And from that day on, he committed to always doing his best. Now, I share this with you not to mean that we all need to get 98% or better on the work that we do. I share it to illustrate that whatever we do, it should be done to the best of our ability. As a pastor, my work is to help others take one step closer to God. And yes, I do have a human boss, but ultimately, I work for God. And to hear him say, well done, would bring me so much satisfaction. Which brings up a pro tip for tonight, and that is to work for something greater than yourself. Perhaps the greatest work we could ever do is to serve those around us. I know a girl named Becca who at the age of 13 made a commitment that she was going to sponsor a child from Compassion International all on her own. And so she found work babysitting. She was trustworthy, reliable, built up a reputation of being an amazing babysitter. And to this day, 21 years later, she is still sponsoring kids from Compassion. And so by stepping out in work and by working for something greater than herself, she's literally changing lives around the world. There's another girl I know named Sophie who felt God tugging on her to step up and take a risk by volunteering here at church on the weekends in our elementary spaces. She knew that God had given her the ability to connect with kids, to make them feel known and cared for. And through taking that step, Sophie found a passion and a love for teaching kids about what it means to follow Jesus. She stepped out into a new work experience. She took a risk, and she saw God do some amazing things in the lives of the kids she got to lead. There's another high schooler I know named Jack who stepped up to become a first grade small group leader. He may not know it now, but those first graders will remember him for the rest of their lives. I know I do. My first grade leader was named Gracia, and she taught me what it means to be a follower of Jesus, and that changed the course of my life forever. You see, God created each of us for work, but there's a greater purpose than just making money and buying all the things. God wants to use us to change this world. We live in the greatest, most advanced time ever. We have more than we could ever want and more than our parents or grandparents could ever have imagined. And I want to share with you what Jesus says as he closes out his story about the master and his servants. He says, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. You see, God's given each of us in this room a talent like the master gave his servants in the story that Jesus told. And it's up to us to decide how we're going to use it. Are we going to dig a hole and hide it? Or will we take what God has given us, use it, and make a difference in the world? I know I want to hear God say, well done, good and faithful servant. Don't you? So tonight, I want to challenge you to pick one area in your life that you want to put effort into accomplishing something. It could be your school, could be your chores at home, could be your work, it could be the sports you play or the activities you're involved in. Just pick one area. And I want you to focus on crushing it this week. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for placing inside of all of us the desire and the ability to work. Thank you for creating in us the need to accomplish something outside of ourselves. Thank you for every student here tonight, and thank you for the work you've called them to do. I ask that you would give each of us the courage to crush our work. Jesus, thank you so much for tonight. We love you, and we need you. Amen. Thanks so much, Rev. Have an amazing night.